Yeah, look at that. It's instant. It's actually faster than Redstone. And you know the best part? It only required one single line of code to be changed, and then it worked perfectly. Yeah, don't I feel like a dumbass? Hey everyone, this is a follow-up to the Copper Wiring 1.0 release, which first of all, wow, I did not expect that to blow up. Thank you for the 1,000 subscribers and all the views and comments. There were a lot of comments. And some of those comments had questions that I didn't answer in the 1.0 release video just because I didn't think about answering them. And there were also some change ideas and some new ideas for updates, which is really good because, full disclosure, I had no idea where I was going to take this pack, and it took me a while to sort of figure all this out. But I've got a bunch of changes and new ideas to show you guys to give you an idea of what's coming in the future. So if you see a change you requested or wanted in this video, then rest assured it will be coming soon. So first of all, as you saw in the intro, yeah, I managed to make the wires instant. I really didn't think they would for some reason, but I realized why they were not being instant. If you want a brief technical explanation, basically there are entities in these rods that allow them to update properly, and when the rods were not powered, the entities wouldn't be present as sort of a optimization, keep the amount of entities down sort of thing. So yeah, the worst part about this data pack is no longer in existence, and I wish I knew about that before I released 1.0, otherwise it wouldn't have been that bad. But anyways, the past is in the past, this is instant now, and in the next update I release, it will all be instant and work perfectly. And even though it is instant, you can still like do that and it'll still do like a one tick thing. So that way you can still use this thing, which I didn't think would be the case, but I'm glad it is. But anyways, let's answer a few questions you guys had in comments. People asked me when this is coming to Bedrock. I said coming soon, but that's because I didn't know what other updates I would add to this pack. And now that I've got a few, it's going to come after those updates just because I'm not a Bedrock player, nor do I program in Bedrock, so I'd rather have all the changes out of the way and then just simply port it over to Bedrock all at once everything's working. So that does mean the Bedrock version is a bit on delay, but once everything else is worked out, it will definitely be the top priority. Another question people had is why not make these all omnidirectional so they can work as long as they're facing the same axis rather than just the same direction. And for one thing, I don't even know if that's possible, and it would actually probably cause the performance on this data pack to be really bad. So I just figured it's easier just to have them all face the same direction, and if placing these things in the right way is annoying, then a friend of mine by the name of DumpstarFireDev has actually created a data pack for that, which allows you to rotate them and place them much easier using a special tool. So if that seems like a solution for you, I'd recommend checking out that data pack. The video will be linked in the description. And then one last question people had is why there needs to be a transformer in the first place versus like something like this. And that's because due to how lightning rods work, they will power all adjacent redstone blocks when they are powered. So this copper bulb, for instance, would be powered and therefore power this thing, and they would just perpetually power each other and never end. So instead you have to have a non-solid block in between, so I figured that's a good reason to have a transformer. So now that we got those questions out of the way, let's go to the actual changes and updates. For one thing, people wanted a redstone lamp to be able to do what a copper bulb does, which honestly I agree, it was just an oversight on my part. I also read that the behavior of the copper bulb should probably change because sometimes you can't always tell when it's powered due to the little tiny red thing right there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this so that it has to be powered and lit up, which actually allows you to sort of have a slower send rate of the electricity with this block specifically, and so you can actually use them for different purposes, which I think is probably a good solution. But beyond that, moving to the logical side of things, we currently only have 3 logic gates in this entire pack, which isn't very ideal since there's actually 8 when it comes to real computers. Obviously we have a buffer, which is just an input to an output, just simple. After that, we have the OR gate, which is just if there's input A going through, it'll go through. If there's input B, it'll go through. Or if there's both, it'll also go through. And the AND gate works similarly, except both inputs have to be on in order for it to be powered, so that neither of the inputs send through unless you have enough. But that's all we've got here. We don't have any invert gates, and we also don't have the XOR, which is like a true OR. And so I decided to add both of those functionalities into one block, which is through the chain. It will now be serving the purpose of a transistor, and with the transistor, if you have one input, it'll just go through like normal, but if you have 2 inputs, then the signal will not go through normally and will instead go specifically through the transistor. Now that takes the place of an XOR gate, but if you have another input going into this block that's powered, then this input and this output will be inverted of each other, And so you have an inverter, and therefore all 4 of the logic gates can have an inverted variant, which brings our total up to 8 like it's supposed to be in the first place. And so it'll be coming out in an update very soon. Before that though, another change I thought of implementing is actually changing the transformer to an end rod. The reason being is because it's not hard to get chains, and once you have them, it sort of trivializes the fact that copper wires are powered by lightning, and it just allows you to use any redstone very quickly. And so in order to make that more of a progression thing, I'm using end rods, so that way you have to actually beat the game in order to make copper wiring a lot easier. Now that being said, I'm going to add also some other sources that don't need transformation, so that way you can power copper wires without just lightning. And these sources currently that I'm going to implement are going to include the daylight detector, because it's literally a solar panel, the observer when there's a pulse from a block update, and I don't know for sure, but I think I'm going to have the skulk and calibrated skulk sensor as well. All of these, with the exception of the daylight detector, are all pulse related, so you can't just have an endless stream of electronic power like you can with a transformer, and that's on purpose because it would otherwise be too easy to just flick a lever or use a redstone block and call it a day. Now moving on to a lot of different change ideas, the capacitor had a lot of questions and a lot of concerns and criticisms, and they're absolutely warranted. So for one thing, it's not a true capacitor because it doesn't have any set capacity, it's unlimited. And because it's unlimited, I wasn't able to like fill this little dark area like a lot of people want and like I originally wanted to. And so I'm thinking of changing the heavy core to something other than a capacitor that will have a minimum and maximum. I don't know what purpose it'll have yet. My current idea is that if it's fully charged, then it will like summon lightning or something. I think that'd be kind of cool. And with it doing something cool and unique like that, I think that better justifies how hard it is to get these and how expensive they are, which, fun fact, I have not played survival since the 1.21 update, so I just literally had no idea how rare these things were. But if this no longer serves the purpose of the capacitor, we need a new block to serve that purpose. And I'm thinking of using the copper grate as that. Now I know the copper grate is currently used as sort of a power split block, and that's where the cut copper comes in. I'm thinking of changing it to the cut copper because that's not going to be too hard, and I think that just makes more sense. The only concern is the fact that from far away, it's hard to tell the difference from these if you're like really far away. But other than that, it shouldn't be a problem, and I think honestly, if you're placing these, you'll probably know what they are. You won't forget just by being far away. And so that frees up the copper grate to be used as a capacitor, and I think maybe oxidation stages might affect how fast it's charged or the maximum capacity. I don't know, just an idea. And also completely unrelated, I'm thinking of integrating the lodestone into this data pack, because when you think about it and with how it interacts with compasses, it's kind of like a magnet, so magnet, copper, I don't know, just an idea. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I kind of want to do something with it. Not sure yet. You guys let me know what you think. Now on to the 2 most requested features into this data pack. The first one is insulating wires so that they don't deal contact damage. And just like how copper uses honeycomb to wax it, I'm thinking this will use honeycomb to insulate it. The problem is I don't know how I want that to look. With the honeycomb block, it's all stretched out and weird, and you can't tell it's powered under the insulation. And with the honey block itself, it's a little bit more visual. You can kind of tell a bit more. It looks not nearly as bad, but I don't know if that's necessarily the look I want to go for. So, definitely insulation will happen. I just don't know how I want it to look just yet. But the other most requested change is that the electric shock damage that happens when you're touching these blocks here, which does happen in water, would actually happen at a further range in water, which makes sense since water is very conductive. And the truth is, this is incredibly easy to add. Like, it'll probably take me like 10 minutes and it'll work perfectly. The only thing about it is that I could really only realistically extend this to just 1 block out, because if I were to extend it to say 2 or more, then like I would be standing here with a clear separation here, and I would actually take shock damage. The only way to prevent that from happening is to do a lot more block checks, which again would tank the performance of this data pack. So honestly, I think having just 1 block out for how easy it is probably going to be good enough. But the last thing I want to talk about in this video is the Spyglass. No, I'm just kidding. I want to talk about scope. Specifically the scope of this data pack. There were a lot of comments with a lot of really cool ideas. The problem is they're better for like a mod. And so I think it's important to mention that I want this data pack to be very vanilla friendly, and sort of like if Mojang were to have gone down this route, this is what it would look like. And in that regard, I don't have any plans to make this into a mod simply because I like datapacks more personally. I always like the challenge of figuring out how I can make something work in Minecraft with the limits of the game itself. And both that as well as just keeping things vanilla friendly and what Mojang would add is kind of what my datapacks are centered around. And yes, I say datapacks because I've made multiple. If you want to check them out, they're all on Planet Minecraft. And as I update them to 1.21, I will also post them on Modrinth. But going back to this data pack, the goal of this copper wiring is not to replace redstone, but to just be a good addition to redstone. So that's why there are some limits to it, but also some benefits. It can be used in some cases where redstone isn't as good and vice versa. A few people also suggested ideas of power generators and things like that. Again, that's way out of the scope, obviously, for this data pack. However, if you want a data pack that's very similar in regards to using copper lightning rods to route power, then DumpstarFireDev has also made another data pack that's actually going live today as of me recording this video. And it's a bit different than mine, but it also allows things like power generation and like a quantifiable power amount, as well as adding some really cool contraptions that would allow you to do things in the game that you weren't able to before. So if that's your cup of tea rather than what I made, then absolutely go ahead and check out his data pack instead. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. If an idea of yours was shown off in this video, then like I said, it's going to be added in a future update. Don't know when these updates are coming out. It's going to be whenever I have time to make them. So hopefully the next month or two. I don't know. We'll see. But if you have any other ideas that you think fit the scope of this data pack, then feel free to let me know in the comments. And otherwise, thanks for watching.